Welcome to Home with Kellyjo Coney-Khan, where we reset your nervous system and rewire your life. One honest conversation a month. I'm Kellyjo, and today's episode is called Keeping It Simple, the Coney-Khan Way. I'm joined by someone you'll hear a lot more from over time. My husband, Samier Coney-Khan. We're not doing an interview so much as a real conversation about what it actually takes to keep life simple when it really isn't. Especially when you're living with a sensitive system and a brain that doesn't always match what the world expects from you. We're going to talk about how Samier sees the world, what's shaped him, and the way he makes sense of things when life gets loud. My hope is that you'll hear parts of yourself in this too, and maybe find a calmer, simpler way of looking at your own life. I didn't just choose Samier because he's my husband. I chose him because he's a man with many years of experience who has learned a lot. For anyone meeting you for the first time, Samier, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and also welcome to the show?
Thank you so much, Kellyjo. It's great to be here. Thank you for speaking with me and inviting me to this session. To make it easy, I'd just say that I worked in the financial technology industry for 30 plus years. It's an industry which is brutal. It's very competitive, dog-eat-dog world, and highly stressful because one's got to meet their numbers for the quarter, for the year, and every month there's a grind. I must say, I enjoyed my work, as much as it was very stressful and so on. I enjoyed doing the work I did. I mean, I can't think of a single time when I just didn't want to do what I was doing. But, that's my background. I started out being in the music business when I was in my teens. I sang for a band. I occasionally sing. So, I think of myself as a creative person because in the business of fintech, providing solutions to clients who are institutions, financial institutions, it needed creativity, to bring in terms of problem solving. So yeah, that's something I do very well. Let me put it this way. If I needed somebody to know about myself, I would just reflect on what I've heard from people around me, which is I'm very passionate and compassionate. I'm very driven. And I'm also a nice guy, I think people say that.
And just to add to that, something I know about you is with your relationships with people, is that you've built these relationships that are so strong that people come back to you 30 years later.
They do.
They remember you. And, it's not just a remembering, but it's I want to be around Samier. It's like, people love to be around you. It's like you co-regulate their nervous system.
I suppose, yeah, that's a way of putting it. I would agree. I think it all comes down from very early in my life, right? When I was a kid, I used to dance, I used to sing, which made me realize that I'm a very people person. I mean, I needed an audience. And one of the things that I came across was when you were kind to people or when you related to people on their level, whether you were singing, whether I was singing or whether I was dancing or later on took a role in a sales career, it's very important to respect people. So I did that. And I truly believe in the mantra that building relationships, you're at the end of the day, your relationships in the marketplace, if you're a businessman, it's all about how many people you know, how well you know them, and how much they would bet on you. So, and trust you, essentially. So it's important maybe that, I build good relationship not only with clients, but with my teams. Every person that I brought into a project, I had a close relationship with them, knew about their families. When I moved to Singapore, and when people moved to Singapore, I helped them, get residence in place, get their children's, admissions into schools in place. So I did a lot of that, which I thought was something I should keep doing, which helps people to build that rapport with me. They can rely on me. I think that's very important. I'm very reliable. And hence, like when I moved.
So I'm hearing acts of service.
Yeah, it's a service, yeah. And which complements from the job that you're doing. So anything that you do and you plug in, you wrap it around with acts of service, people appreciate that a lot more. And and therefore, as you were saying, I've moved from one company to another, probably, 5 companies in my life. I've had clients from the first company sticking with me till my last company, where, to them, it wasn't a relationship with the company that I worked for. It was that, but it was also a relationship with me. So when I moved, they moved with me as well.
Excellent. Yeah. And, this is so poignant right now because we are taught relationship building skills in the industry that I work in, right? But this is not something that was necessarily taught, but more learned at first and through other people and experience and so forth. We actually have a term, which is rupture and repair.
Right.
There is a lot of the articles online talk about how there is this development of blocking culture and cutting people out and off. Now, to some extent, when relationships get really toxic, of course, that makes sense. But on the other hand, rupture and repair, I think, is absolutely key.
True.
And I'm curious, for someone who wasn't taught that in the same way as someone would be taught who is a therapist, I'm just curious, how did you learn rupture and repair?
So true what you just said, right? Because, in your industry, people are fortunate that they at least, if they're not taught, they're given that knowledge that relationship building, rupture and repair is very important. In the industry, probably mine and many others, I've never thought, it was assumed that you're a good relationship builder. It wasn't taught. You just had to come in and start your career, and people would accept, or rather expect, that you can build good relationships. So there was no knowledge. For me, it was more about observing people, learning from how people interacted. And then I think that, someone told me that, this thing comes very natural to you. I suppose it does. And I've reflected upon it a lot. And in my reflection now, to answer your question, it would be, I was quite impulsive, I would say, when I was young. I was reactive, I would say. But despite all that, to me, it was I learned this, that when a Japanese businessman meets a client, in his mind, he thinks that his daughter is going to be married into the family of that gentleman.
Wow.
So that's the amount of, respect you have for people around you. Because what you give comes back, and that's why, people have, there was a time when I helped somebody to come into a project in Singapore with one of the banks out here. And after he left, he moved to the US. And when I had to leave Singapore and go to take care of my dad, he helped me get a job in India as a consultant. Just because, and it was not, So what I'm saying is, when you respect people, and I'll come to how I do that later, but to make sure that you're always respectful, because that's what you would want with people, it pays off.
Yeah, and I think that is something really key. And just on the topic of keeping life simple, now we're into relationship building skills and interpersonal relationships, which are just critical for life. And it's not necessarily something that we learn. Sometimes it's just through experience rather than sort of being taught. So I think that it would be really great if the audience could hear, like you said, how to, because about my work in that
I do.
you know about the parts work, you understand that I do EMDR, you understand what I do, the modalities that I use. But if we're keeping it simple and we're taking out that clinical jargon and we're hearing it from someone who has experienced it firsthand without that clinical repertoire, we could say, how did you learn to do this? And what are sort of maybe just 3 learning points that you could share about this?
Sure. So, I would have answered this question very differently if it was about, 15, 20 years back. And I understand how I need to interact with people and in a way that they'd feel safe with me. They'd feel energized to think they will unleash their creative self, essentially. And also because they feel safe and they can do what they want. And I say creative, unleash their creativity. They also they start trusting you because they feel you're reliable. And today, how I would go about answering that question would be, there's a saying called think before you speak. Now, I've changed some words there, changed the language there. And I think what I've started practicing is be mindful, things that I've learned from you, things like being mindful, being, take a pause, think, and then act, because then you're not reacting. And that part is very critical for me in not only in building relationships, but in everything that I do. So I take a pause. I mean, now I know that for me, despite all the knowledge that may have been and what I've picked up, it's very important to answer your question in a what is a 3-prong approach to this? It would be to give all the 3, make a person feel safe, unleash their creativity or their, let the buoyancy of their soul come about, that they feel safe and they can speak about things, uninhibited. And keep in mind, they're going to rely on you. And to rely on you, they have to trust you. And you act in those ways. And, one of the ways I learned was, how do I expect others to be around me? And I would put myself in their shoes. And that's how I think I learned. What would I want in this situation? I'm talking to a person who's just bumped in my car. Right? Now, if I was a person who bumped into somebody's car, how would I want that person to approach me, get out of the car, and how would he approach me? That's how I have learned. And that's what I practice.
And I think what I also heard was, think, pause, and safety.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. And something I also was thinking that I know about you as well, Samier, is that I know that you're non-judgmental. I know you are not a critical person. I also know that you don't even use like swear words, like vulgarities or anything. And not saying I do, by the way. But these are things I know about you.
Yes.
And what a calm disposition you have. And as well, something we talked about rupture and repair, and we linked that with keeping life simple. Now I'd like to link self-regulation. So how do you, in your way, before you knew any of this language, before even meeting me, right? Because when we met, you were these things, right? So I'm just curious if we could learn more so that the audience could understand how you did this and what you put into practice for yourself, kind of from the inside out.
Let me start from where I was I've seen a lot of uncomfortable interactions,
Right.
be it on television, be it in school, be it with people around me. I saw, and it used to make me uncomfortable because it would contradict my thought process that people need to be good to each other and be kind to each other and so on. So when I was growing up, I was I was good at studies, but I was also a musician. I had long hair and I was also a dancer. So a lot of people would think, just like in social media today, when you put yourself out there, you will have haters as well. Right? And I did that. Really, there was no internet or social media then, so it was really like physical. You could see people talking about you or talking to you and telling you, unpleasant things, mean things, right? So I thought that this is something I'm never gonna be a part of. I can't change people around me. So for me, what I started to do was to mindfully control and myself.
Yeah.
And, therefore it just became a habit where I would, I didn't like judgment because my teachers told me a lot of nasty things when I was in school. Yeah. So, and I listened to them and, it would hurt me a lot, right? When they did that. Right.
Right.
And
Right.
then to me, the logic was very simple. Would I want to hurt someone?
Yeah.
I'm interacting with a person for a purpose, be
Yeah.
it friendship, be it because I want them to wash my car, or if they want, get a job done or close a deal, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
If I want them to do something I want, it cannot be done if I shout at them, if I use unpleasant language, so on and so forth, right? So yeah,
Well, and from a fear-based perspective,
no,
what I'm curious about is when you say it can be done, what is the difference when, somebody might use judgment or shouting to get something done
right.
versus getting something done with kindness?
Right.
I think it would be great for listeners to hear, the benefits of that.
Oh, the benefits of that is that you always keep you keep a very strong and a good positive feedback loop. That's one, right? That people use two ways of, they use one or two ways of getting things done.
Yeah.
And one of the ways is fear. I think, I was saying that, people are allowed to, if they're given the space to express themselves, it's healthy. The feedback loop is good. There are people who believe, and rightfully so, they believe in fear-based motivation, and there are others who believe in love and encouragement-based motivation. I fall in the later.
Yeah. Can I just say something here as well? Because I think something that was really important in my learning too, and also one of the many reasons that I have found about how do we, for lack of a better term, make the world a better place? To quote one of my all-time favorite singers. Now, how do we do that, right? So one of the things I also understand as well is judgment comes from a place of stress, right? It comes from a place of complex trauma. So we can't be judgmental and not have stress or complex trauma, right? So this is something that, we know from the research and the evidence. The other aspect as well of this is, something that really hit home for me, and this was a good number of years ago, was not judging the judgment. And I know that's really challenging to do. This was a very interesting concept of not judging the judgment, because even the people that judge, once we understand ourselves, and the reason that they might have judged us or criticized us, it will then help us not to hold on to the anger, not to hold on to the resentment. Now, I know that that is not easy to do, right? That's not an easy concept to grasp. Yeah. But I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on this point?
I mean, my thoughts. I'm very aligned with what you're saying. If one is in a situation where either one is judgmental because of reasons of stress or pressure in that moment. Alternatively, if you're at the receiving end of, unpolite language and judgment, if one starts judging that, if I start, so it would be two ways, right? Either I'm a persecutor because I've judged someone and I start judging myself, judge the judgment,
Yeah.
as you
Yeah.
said. Or if I'm on the receiving end, because it puts a person, if you're judging the judgment, into a realm of communicating with your inner voice, inner critic.
Yeah.
And that conversation is definitely never helpful. I mean, I know people say that my inner critic helped me to overcome or to get a job done or whatever it is. And that's good, right? So there have to be all kinds of people. But from where I'm at or what I believe in, from that perspective, I try to quieten my inner critic down. I don't get into a dialogue of judging things that I do. But coming to your point, it is, if one understands that, how one would receive things, one would like to receive things, either a task or either a compliment or either whatever it is, and then one plays from the other side, it works. I mean, it's worked a lot for me, at least from my experience.
Yeah, and I think this has made me think about something a little bit like sort of to go a little bit broader here, okay, and then come back in, is going back to what you were saying about work and when work is tough, and also about not, how do we not take things personally? Because it's very easy for us to talk about, but it's not so easy for some people to apply it, right? So in terms of the application, right, and thinking about, across your lifespan and your learnings, how have you been able to apply this? What do you think holistically that you did that could be a learning point for the audience, that, or could remind them of things that they might already know, but remind them, hey, yeah, is it taking a step back? What does regulating yourself look like? And I think that when we were talking about doing this interview, you had mentioned about your posture, and there was a few things that you do. It's not just one thing. And it's also how you work and how you are viewing life. And I just wonder if you could share a bit more about that.
Okay. If I was to approach this from a physical perspective, right? And I teach this to many of my teammates. I mean, people who report to me and so on, who used to report to me and so on. What I would say is, very often if you remain in a body position, whether you're standing or sitting, and you're not mindful of it, you don't recognize it, your response will be, in whether you're down or whether you're angry or whatever feelings you have at that time, right? And one of the ways to mitigate that, I thought, was, the first thing is, before I share that, is the psychology of interactions and people. That's very, that's played a big role in my life. So to me, what I teach and what I also practice is to pause in that moment, come to where you are, and then you can adjust a few things. You can sit straight, because when your shoulders are back, or if you're standing, your shoulders are back, either if you're standing or sitting, but if your shoulders are back. So, let me share what I do, what works for me. And, I've tried different things, and some work, some don't work. So I'll just share what works for me. Every time I've started to live in the moment. And what that means is that in every moment that you are conscious of yourself and your surroundings. Right? So when you do that, what I do is I try and be in the moment, and then I correct my posture. So I will, if I'm standing, I'd roll back my shoulders. If I'm sitting, I'd sit straight with my shoulders behind. And something happens, something magical happens when you're in that, when you have arranged your body in that way, it makes you more confident. It makes you feel more calmer. And you can have at least in my experience, have more healthier conversations.
That's right.
I think the other thing is, breathing has been, now people are talking a lot about it, and my experience is that in any situation, before you answer a question or before you do something, from an interaction perspective, if you take a couple of deep breaths, it kind of grounds you. And what that means for people who may question what does this mean really. It means that you've come to yourself, your body is calm, it's not in a state of threat, and therefore you feel those three things that I used to make people feel, which is safe, the person I'm interacting with is reliable, and it, gets my creativity out. Right?
Yeah.
So those are things that I do. I take a deep breath. I correct my posture. And then I look at the facts. So there's another thing that I do a lot, which is look at the facts around me, right? Whether it's whether in any kind of communication and any kind of things that I do, I make sure that I'm keeping the facts in my mind, because if you start relying on your thoughts, I mean, that's why it's called an inner critic, right? Because it's criticizing. So you don't want to encourage that conversation in your head. So just look at the facts. If a person who I know walks, if I'm on a street and I walk by a person who knows me, I mean, I know him, he knows me, and he doesn't say anything and he just looks straight and walk away, my inner voice would say, maybe he doesn't like me, maybe he's upset with something I've done. But rather than that, I would just look at the facts that he walked straight, and I would not assume anything. But I would tell myself that, okay, he's probably very busy at the moment. There are things in his mind. Or maybe he was on a call with a headset. That helps me out. Yeah.
Something that I sometimes share with clients when I'm doing, call it an interweave, right? But it's basically when we're helping to unblock the processing, right? Is that once I was walking, I was in my gym clothes, I was walking. And I didn't realize the face I was pulling, but I was starting to think about something that was irritating me. And I didn't even know that I was frowning. And as I was walking, I just noticed someone look at me. And I realized, oh my gosh, this person could feel like I'm judging them.
Right.
But I was thinking about something in my mind that had kind of irritated me that morning, or the day hadn't started off well, It wasn't anything to do with that person. So ever since that moment, it just reminded me, go out there with a smile. And I know that you introduced me to a show once and you said, about the guy always smiling, right? And you said one of the things that you do is you smile.
Very much.
And you smile when you're talking, like you're smiling now.
Yeah.
And I think that you can hear a smile.
You can. Even on a phone conversation, do you know that? If people are on the phone, if they're standing and smiling before they start speaking on the phone, the person on the other hand feels relaxed and feels safe.
Yeah. So I ever since that moment, I realized, and I just go out now, and when I'm walking, I make a conscious effort to smile. I process the thing that irritated me before going out, and I just try and put on a smile, because I realize it is the simple things that make such a difference. It's not always, even in session, it's not always the complicated stuff that unblocks things. Sometimes it's the really simple thing. So I just wonder, Samier, if you had to define keeping it simple in maybe one sentence, Khan style, what would you say?
I would say, think about where you are. Essentially what I'm saying is that you have to be in the moment, whatever that moment is for you.
Right.
You have to be in that moment and look at, in your mind, think about what are the facts. And also, and some of the things that you can do is, correct your posture, breathe a little deeply, smile all the time. Those are some of the things that I think help.
Yeah.
There's another thing that when you were talking earlier, processing, I didn't know about it for a very long time.
Right.
What that meant, right?
Yeah.
Then, learning so much from you itself. I think processing is a very good skill that should be taught to children, teenagers as they grow.
Absolutely.
Because everything, when you process stuff, they used to say sleep over it, and then, next day you'd feel more ready for whatever the conversation would be or whatever you needed to. And I think nobody told me what sleep over it meant. It just felt sleeping, and then things would change. But essentially it's that, you go to bed thinking about it. You can process in real time. If I'm in the kitchen and something going on, something that happened, which I need to process because I feel that it shook my equilibrium. I just quickly process it then and there. And I'm not saying that it's like processing is different kinds. It can be done in a minute, can be done in a couple of days. But process it if you learn that skill, you would always, be in balance, be in that equilibrium.
I love this. I remember a study once where they had teachers in the playground and they would actually teach children to process in real time. So body sensation, what is it you're feeling? And it literally prevented bullying. It brought so many connections together. Their grades shifted without focus on the grades. It was incredible. So, there is so much in this, processing, right? I think it'd be great if we can talk just a little bit more about this, because what I do in session is reprocessing, because we're taking something and we're redoing it, right? Because it wasn't done there and then.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
So literally, if we do it there and then, right?
True, yeah.
I mean, then I'm going to have to get a new job. Which is totally okay with me in the long run. But I mean, I love my job and I love reprocessing with everybody. It's wonderful. But I would also love people to have this kind of way of self-taught processing in the moment and be able to understand how much that can help regulate their nervous system and change their life and their relationships. So I wonder if you could share a little bit more.
Just to your point, I think a human being goes through a lot of experiences and, unfathomable amount of experiences if you really look at it, from the time you're born to a certain age. There will be several incidents in your life that you will not be able to process quickly. It could be anything, So you're never going to lose your job. There'll always be people who need to come back and process something big. I think a skill that a lot of people can learn is how to quickly process smaller, minor incidents, which happen every day, and you go to the office and one of your colleague is not in a good mood and they, hit back at you, right? And then on the same day, the paper runs out from the printing machine, right? And you have to do your presentation and, your computer's not working or somebody, these are small things that get you irritated, right? In a language which many people use, they get you triggered. If you can process those little events, if you learn the art of processing, that bit, and you keep going, it won't cumulatively become a big thing for you, right? And typically I've heard that happen. Somebody says, oh, my workplace is horrible. I mean, it's a good office, the air conditioning works, there's food, they're good people. Why is it horrible? It's just because of these small incidences that accumulate over a period of time and they have not processed it. Right?
I'm just curious. I want to just ask you something else here. Based on this, what about people who might say, but I don't have time to process this? What would you say to that?
I think that, what's the alternative? The alternative is you don't have time to process, you don't process, you get triggered quite quickly, and then things accumulate and it becomes a big stress in your life. If you want to manage stress, I mean, if one wants to manage stress, one of the best things to do is to be able to process everything in real time, at least the small events.
Yeah, so I think you've hit the nail on the head here, right? Because what would happen when we're not processing on the go, right? What's going to happen is this accumulation of stress, resentment, build up, right? And it's going to come out at the people we don't want it to come out with mostly. It's going to come out with our loved ones, right? The people that we actually are saying, wait, I don't want to speak like this to my kids. I don't want to do this. But it comes out. It can't be, in that moment, it can't be helped because there's an accumulation of stress, right? So on the one hand, it can't be helped. And on the other hand, we then feel bad that we did it, right? So I think this also comes back to not judging the judgment. When we feel bad that we did it, if we judge the judgment, we feel shame. And if we feel shame, we end up, that leads us to explode and do more
Okay.
of the thing that we don't want to do.
Right.
What would you say about this
No,
piece?
I would agree with you completely. And it happens to many people all the time, right? It's important to learn the art of processing small events and processing all the time. We do process sometimes subconsciously, right? In other things, like you process a song and you like the voice of the, artist. We do processing. We do process what you want. Someone asks you, what do you want to eat for lunch or dinner today? You do process. A processing would be, your thing. But, the art of processing, if it's learned well and you're in the moment and you're kind to yourself as you are kind to others, these things really, you won't accumulate stress.
Right.
And one of the best ways to manage stress is to process consistently. Is to also all the three things.
I just thought of something. This is something I don't even know if it's a term yet. It probably is, but you know that we love to make up words together, right? It's a thing we do. It's like if that word's not there, we make it up together and it becomes our little couples dictionary. So, this is what I was thinking. Co-processing.
Co-processing,
right?
Yeah.
Co-processing. And this is something, and I think, listeners and the audience out there, if they are in a relationship, whether it's a thing or not, I think it needs to be a thing because we do it, right? We co-process. And I know that, in like any relationship, in the beginning, we went through our own teething challenges, right? So, you go through these stages, but we got through it. And how did we get through it? We got through it because we felt through the fear. We had these challenges. We knew that we both wanted the same thing. Very simple. We just both wanted to be content in our relationship and have harmony, right?
Yep.
Which I think everybody wants.
Everybody wants.
Yeah. So what I'm saying with the co-processing is how did we do it? How did we get through that to get to that point where now we co-process things? If you know that I might go numb or I might zone out or something like that, you reel me back in. Or you ask me, what's going on. And now you're able to listen and you don't take it personally, right? Even if it's something that's bothered me in that moment. So let's maybe talk a little bit about this co-processing and how do people co-process together in any relationship, not just in a couple relationship, right?
Yeah. I think, part of that is like when you said in any situation, right? When you feel that you've lost your equilibrium, you feel triggered, as in a couple relationship. Let me just take that example, right? Which could be, it could be between friends, it could be between colleagues and so on. When you feel that there is a little bit shift in the equilibrium between, you and any other person, I used to make assumptions. That didn't really help. But I think that it took a longer time and it took apologies and so on, right? And I'm not saying apology is not a right thing. What we do today and what I think, how I think about it is rather than making assumptions, we ask questions to get that clarity because, and when one presents, if I ask you a question and you come to a place where you want to answer, you express yourself, and I understand it, that is the first step of repair. From a rupture perspective, that's the first step of repair. Without assuming things, by asking and wanting, knowing that, or sometimes, when I know that I'm not happy about a certain thing, what I would do is I would tell myself, I would ask a question, how do you want this to end, this conversation? That both of us are happy, have understood each other, respect, and, we want that, right? So if both people have the end goal as the same, to come out of this happy, safe, content, and then start with the process of asking questions, so not assuming and sorting. So I think that helps.
Yeah, and you know something as well, this reminds me of something I talk about with couples, is 80-20, 20-80, 50-50 rule.
Yes.
So sometimes we're like 50-50 in a relationship, right? And this can be applied again to any relationship between two people. Sometimes we're 50-50, other times it's 80-20, which means one person could be like 80% regulated, the other person could be 20% regulated. Regulated means to the point of calm, grounding, able to be in your body and mind. So what I'm thinking here is, when this happens between two people or the other way around, then this co-processing, sometimes it takes that person who is the 80 to do a little bit more of the work and vice versa, because the other person isn't able to pull themselves out of it in the moment. Now, of course, there are some relationships where people may feel, right, it's 80-20 on the other side all the time. Those are a different story altogether. But if you're in a secure, healthy relationship, then it's different. You get that balance, don't you? So so I wonder if this has led you to think of anything else, Samier, on this point.
I think there is, it's applied to, if one looks at it, when you're in the moment, as you said, and in your body, and when you look at the things from a data perspective, what are the facts, you come to understand that you may be 80 and the person that you're interacting with might be 20. You can understand that the person is sad or suddenly crying in front of you, right? And you know that you're 80%, so you could do two things. You could process it by yourself, but the good thing, if you can, is to process it together, so co-processing.
Yeah.
And then, sometimes one person has to do a little more than the other sometimes.
Like I notice sometimes, right, I might remind you to take certain medicines or something, right? Or I might say, sweetheart, have you done this? And then you're like, oh no, I forgot that. And then it reminds you, right? Other times it's like I've come back after an intensive or something and I'm a little bit drained and I forget about my self-process.
Yes.
And you'll say, sweetheart, you had a session today, you had an intensive today. Have you done your processing? It reminds me, oh yeah, maybe I haven't done that. That's something I need to do. Or you'll notice that I'm a bit cranky or a bit snappy and you don't take it personally anymore. You know, and you come up to me and you're like, I think you need a hug. Right? It's so simple. I mean, hugging and the oxytocin release, I think about the different ways that we can show love. Like you've talked about acts of service and safety and there's the words of encouragement. This is also physical touch and being present with someone, within the realms of what feels safe in that moment. And, sometimes that's even asking, would you like a hug? Right? I think these are some of the simple things that help so much in relationships. And I know that some of this may be very obvious to our listeners, the people out there listening to this right now. But, sometimes it can be great to be reminded of the simple stuff.
Right. It's a great reminder. I mean, most of the things that we've talked about, people may know it or they might think that, it's something that I practice. But it works as knowledge for people who don't know it, but to many others who know about this, it's a good reminder. And I mean, it's something that I learned was when I was working, when I was in corporate world, there were times when I couldn't manage myself. I would get very stressed. And in that moment, I would be very reactive to feelings of sadness or anger or, and I would judge myself as well. But I thought about it and I've come to realize, it wasn't a aha moment in one night I got all the answers, right? But things that I didn't do then, and probably I couldn't. There were conference calls at 12 o'clock in the night, 1 o'clock in the morning with clients who were in a day zone. And those things happen, but people don't really value the art of taking rest. and how beneficial it can be to everybody. Things like sleeping, you know me, but for people who are listening to this, I love to get my 9 hours. It's not 7, it's not 8, it's 9. I love to get my 9 hours when I can, because I get up, and in the moments when I'm awake, I'm most productive.
Yeah.
I'm most creative, and I feel energized.
This is so poignant right now as well, because I know for a lot of people, and especially working in a city, right? One of the things is never having enough, right? And when do we have enough, right? Resources, money, whatever it might be. Yeah. And for some people in some positions that I've spoken to, taking rest is kind of linked with rest. It is going to eventually accumulate in me not having enough later.
Yeah, true. I mean, if rest should be a non-negotiable, I think. If you're not resting, if you're not cognizant of the fact that you need your sleep, you don't need your rest, you will, with that kind of high pressure work that we do, and it's only going to get worse, right? Working, it's not going to get easier. Yeah, people say, Samier, you kind of talking about 9 hours. I don't have the time,
Yeah.
But if you look at it, you do. I mean, you can stop watching television in the night. You can eat early. You can stop doing certain things. You need to find your time when you can get your 9 hours or 8 hours or whatever.
You have to create the time somewhere.
Yeah. And to your point, if one doesn't do that, one gives excuses, you're going to burn out your body, both you're going to and your mind. So mentally and physically, you're going to burn out, sooner than later. And there's a lot of conversation. I speak to my friends and people in the industry, not the fintech industry, but people by large. We talk about longevity. I mean, that's a new thing everybody's talking about, right? The basic fact of that is if you're not taking care of your body and your mind as you live, you are going to hit a roadblock at some point.
And there is years and years of evidence on this.
Fine.
Yeah. So the adverse childhood experiences tells us that an accumulation of stress actually does affect our longevity, right?
Yeah.
So we know this, and we've seen it firsthand. We've seen many people who have worked and worked and worked, acquired a lot of things, a lot of money, and then something has happened. Something awful has happened to them. The thing is, this is imperative, right?
Yes.
I mean, we talk about the term self-care, but we don't fully encompass what that really means.
Yes.
And there's also so many different types of rest. Even if we don't have time to get the 9 hours sleep, it is getting those sporadic pockets of rest throughout the day. Like I've heard of athletes who will take short bursts of naps and for example, when they can. So there's different ways of finding rest.
Yeah, truly, I agree. I mean, when I said 9 hours, I'm not advocating that for everybody, but you need to find your time to rest, and you need to find a way to rest. I close my eyes and just focus on body sensations. I lay down on a couch and just, focus on the sounds I'm hearing, what I'm feeling on my skin. It's like a meditation, but it makes you, feel when I finish the process, it makes me feel recharged, as if I had a good 4-hour nap or something. So these are things that one can learn and one can do. I really think rest, sleep, eating well are important. These are not new things. You've heard this all along. People have heard this all along, but it is truly important.
And being in the body, right? Being in the body. Just now, I noticed even just momentarily that my tone changed. And I was like, what's happening to my tone? And I checked my body and I realized that I was really feeling cold in the aircon.
Right.
I was hunched over a bit, but that might have sounded to anyone listening, it possibly could have sounded, they could have heard a tone change, you know? But actually, I was just noticing that I was cold. And sometimes I've said even to clients about dropping into your body.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, even when I first heard that, it didn't make sense. Drop into my body. Yeah. It can sound really unusual when you hear it for the first time. But we do get very heady. And when we get heady and cognitive and intellectual, sometimes it does take us out of our physiology.
Yeah.
And in order to be calm and regulated, it's really important that we're in the body, because when we're in the body, that clears the mind.
Totally. Yeah. There are many things that people can do to be in the body, to be in yourself, to be cognizant of your presence and your surroundings, and it only helps a lot.
Excellent. Okay, this has been wonderful, Samier, and just for everybody out there, this is the first interview on home. So if you've stayed this long and you're still listening, thank you so much. I just have one last question for you, Samier, just before we close out.
Right.
What are the non-negotiables that help you stay steady physically, emotionally, and mentally?
To me, I think sleep is very important. A bit of physical activity is very important. Organizing your thoughts and organizing your thinking are important. They're non-negotiable, I would say. Sleep, I wouldn't give up. I shouldn't say control of my thoughts, but I would say that I would be cognizant of my thoughts. Those are some of the non-negotiables. There are other things that I do. Like I love listening to, the music I grew up with, which is a lot of 70s and 80s pop music and rock music as well. Gets me out of my head and, reminds me of, some good moments that I've had, takes me to a place of peace. I speak with family. I believe in family. I mean, I'm in love with my family. So I speak with people, I text them. Those are things that keep me grounded.
And if someone listening feels overwhelmed and like life is too complicated at the moment, then they relate to you, what 3 simple steps would you offer them to start making life more workable?
I think getting out of their own head, I would get out of my head, definitely, because if I'm in a place where I'm very overwhelmed and I'm thinking about it a lot and I'm in my head, it'll only worsen. It'll only make it more difficult. It'll only make it more overwhelming for me. So I would say that get yourself out of your head. Listen to your voice, because sometimes you just need that silence around you and you need to look at the facts. And when you do that, like, for example, I would say I'm very stressed. I've got a deadline this Friday, a response to a RFP. I don't have all the people around me. How am I going to do that? So, now that I'm thinking that, I'm saying all the negative things that will become an obstacle or a hurdle to reach that deadline. When I start focusing on the facts, I take a deep breath, I calm my body. And when I look at the facts, I have 3 people. All I have to do is call them, tell them how important this is. That team knows how important this bid is. You can, those are the facts, that everybody wants this to be a success. And when you look at those facts, you tend to get out of here and you say, they're not against me. So I think getting out of your head so that, you talk positive, trying to talk positively. But the first thing is to get out of your head and, quiet the inner critic. Do a lot of physical activity for regulation. That's like, coming, sitting in a right posture, also, taking deep breaths, and getting yourself to a place of calm physically.
Getting in the body.
Yes, getting in the body, absolutely.
Dancing, movement.
Anything that makes you, that gets you out there from a feeling perspective, whether it's energetic, whether it's, happy, whether it's whatever it is. Of course, some of the things that you do all the time, irrespective of whether you're overwhelmed or not, which is sleep and so on. So when people get overwhelmed, I would just say that, stop the inner chatter, be in the body, be in the moment. Yeah, I think those two would be very important.
Yeah, I agree. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been good talking to you.
So thank you for joining me on Home with Kellyjo Coney-Khan, for keeping it simple the Khan way with Samier Coney-Khan. If something in Samier's story or perspective landed for you, just pick one simple thing to take with you into the next few days. Small, doable changes are the ones that actually stick. You can listen back to previous episodes and see all future ones by following Home on your podcaster app. Simply go to see all episodes and click follow. And if you feel you have something to offer our listeners, reach out. Whether you're a subject matter expert or not, we believe everyone has something valuable to bring to this world. We're creating a calm space for people to come, settle, and feel regulated. If you'd like to be considered as an interviewee, please email media@tidylodge.com. This is a space so that you know you're not alone. Until next time, I'm Kellyjo Coney-Khan, and this is Home, where you come to reset your nervous system and rewire your life. Join me next Sunday for a 5-minute reset called Cafes, Connection and Calm, a simple reflection on why the smallest moments out in the world can settle your system more than you think.
When you slow it down, throw off the rules like our shoes on the golden ground.